friends, it's Mari here with episode number 25 of Tried, Trendy, and True. Today we're going to be using some beautiful products to create this 12 by 12 layout. And we're going to start off here with this gorgeous stencil from Simple Stories. This is part of the Simple Vintage Life in Bloom collection. This is called Enjoy the Moment. It's a really great stencil that I'm actually going to be combining with some beautiful paper glaze Luxe from Picket Studio. This stencil is a large stencil. You could use this in so many different ways. I could see definitely using this to create a wreath on a project, but today I wanted to create more of a horizontal line on my paper using these Picket Studio spatulas and of course that paper glaze Luxe. This packet comes with 6 different spatulas, which is a fantastic value. You can see all of the different sizes and shapes of the ends here that work really well with this beautiful paper glaze from Picket Fence. Now I'm going to use a couple of colors today, but I'm going to show you 3 different colors that they offer. That first one was Cherry Blossom. This is Pink Magnolia. I'm going to open these 2 pinks up and show you how gorgeous these are. You can just see all of that gorgeous mica and glitter that's infused together in this heavy body medium that's just perfect, and that's the Cherry Blossom. It's really great through stencils, as I'm going to show you today, and I know that you're really going to be impressed with this. This is the Arctic Fox. I love that they sent me this really huge 8 fluid ounce container, because this is a really nice neutral and I'm going to be using that a ton. I'm going to start off here with some Vicki Boutin Foundations paper for my base, and I'm going to just start working my palette knife, my spatula, with the stencil to create that beautiful pink, really nice, light, subtle texture across my project. And like I said, I do want to create this horizontal line through sort of the, well, at this point it kind of looks like around the center, but I'm going to be tearing this paper, so you'll just see where I end up placing this on the project when I'm all finished. So this is just so easy to apply through the stencil. You can just see how it's got that little bit of sparkle and shine, which is gorgeous. Now that first bit is dry. I'm not going over top of the wet medium here. I allowed that first amount to dry, and now I'm going in with a second little bit of stenciling here. And I just wanted to create this line of these beautiful leaves going across the layout. So to do that, I am going to have to take a little bit of time to let the paste dry and then move forward from there. And for this one, I was able to orient the stencil so that I didn't have to let it dry first, which was handy. However, I will say that this paper glaze Luxe does dry quite quickly. And I'm just showing you a different spatula here just so that you can see. This one has a kind of more of a fine point on it, which allows you to maybe get into tinier spots. It's nice that they do give you 6 different types of spatulas in that pack. And here you can just see I'm working into all of these different little areas here, and then I will go ahead and let that dry. You can use a heat tool on this product to speed up the drying time if you choose, and it just kind of depends on how much time you have and that sort of thing. Now I am going to use a little bit of this gorgeous Pink Magnolia to splatter with, so you can add a tiny little bit of water. I wouldn't add too much. I feel like I did get a little bit too much water down on my surface. Just a little bit of water to just reconstitute this and just liquefy it a little bit. And then you can also splatter with it, which is really great if you want to go for a tone on tone look, or in this case, I wanted a little bit of a contrast with the darker pink with the lighter pink. So I'm splattering with Pink Magnolia over top of that gorgeous Cherry Blossom that I used through the stencil. So I'm just tapping the paste into the water so that it does kind of liquefy the paste a little bit. And here you can just see how nicely it does splatter, and it just creates that really beautiful effect. So I love using splatter on my projects. It's just a really nice little bit of subtle mixed media that adds that little bit of extra interest and texture to your project without being too sort of bold. Now this paper is absolutely stunning. This is the 4x6 Elements paper from the Life in Bloom collection. Just a stunning paper. I love that it has a really nice bright white background with these gorgeous florals. These are some of my favorite color combos here with these different flowers with the pinks, yellows, oranges. I just love it, and a little bit of purple. And I am going to tear that horizontal strip, and now you can just see I'm tearing the straight edge off the top as well. So I just want more of a narrow strip that is going to coordinate with that paper glaze Luxe that I have on my paper already. So now I'm just going to take that torn edge and just roll it a little bit, just to create that little bit of more texture by adding that little bit of extra dimension. And so I'm just rolling it up, and what that's going to do is it's going to just really accentuate the fact that that paper is torn. On my layout, you'll be able to really see that. And it also flips up the colors that are underneath and adds a little bit of contrast in that way as well. These are my two photos that I'm going to be documenting with today. I've printed them just slightly smaller than 4x3. They are black and white, obviously. These are two photos from Creativation, and that's the story that I'm documenting here today. My very first trip to Creativation. You can see there a picture of Meg and Andrew, and the other picture is the team from Crafters Companion. I did work in the Crafters Companion booth at Creativation in Columbus, Ohio this year. So here I'm just taking that horizontal strip of paper, and I'm going to adhere that down to my Vicky Boutin Foundations paper here. Just going to add a little bit of tape runner on each side just to tack this down. And I am actually going to sew through the top portion of this torn paper later. So I'm just trying to get it tacked into place so that I can move on with the rest of the project. And now I'm just going to take my foundations paper and I'm going to tear it at the bottom. And because I wanted to add a little bit more of that patterned paper, the same patterned paper at the bottom of my project, I just wanted to tear away some of this foundations paper. And the reason why I'm tearing it away is because, again, I want to create the texture of that torn line. So I could have just added pattern paper over top, but I really wanted to create that texture with the white cardstock as well. So now that's going to allow me to roll up the edge of that white paper to reveal the patterned paper underneath. Now I'm going to use that paper that I tore away from the foundations paper to help me measure so that I get a 12 by 12 piece of paper again. Here you'll just see I'm just starting to think about rolling and distressing that edge of the white paper. But now I'm just going to take that torn away piece and just put it along the bottom edge of the floral paper. I'm just going to make a tiny little pencil mark so that I can see basically where I want to cut this. I want to make it just a little bit wider than that torn away paper so that I have some spot for my adhesive to adhere this onto my project. So here you can just see I'm putting this into the trimmer. I'll trim off that strip, and then I will go ahead and add that on to the project by adhering the foundations paper onto the pattern paper. And I am going to sew along the bottom edge, the lower edge of the white foundations paper along that torn edge. So here you can just see I'm just, again, distressing, and I'm not sure at this point if I have done the sewing yet, but I think I do end up showing you a close-up. I bring the paper right up to the camera to show you the sewing when it does happen. So here, just really trying to create that nice distressed edge. And now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I want to add some more of my paper glaze Luxe to above that torn piece of patterned paper. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab my stencil again, which I did clean in between. So it is really important when you're working with a paste like the paper glaze Luxe to take your stencil to the sink and just get it cleaned up in between when you're going to be using it, just so that that paste doesn't dry onto the stencil. The paste, generally speaking, any sort of medium like this does tend to dry pretty permanent. So it is important to try to get that off of your stencil ASAP so that it doesn't dry on there too badly. And here you can just see again, I'm using the spatula that has the little pointy tip on it, and that's just allowing me to get into some of those finer areas there, especially now that I'm working up against that patterned paper, just to try to make sure that I get that where I want it to go. So really super easy to do. The medium, the paper glaze, the Luxe paper glaze is just really super easy to use. I love it. It is a beautiful product. So now I'm just extending that. I have let that first strip dry, And you can see that the stencil is clean again. So just cleaning the stencil between applications when I've let the paste dry so that I do have a nice clean stencil to work with, and just taking not huge amounts, but a fairly generous amount of the paste to make sure that I am covering in all of those little areas. And just going to finish that up here. I didn't want to extend the pattern too high up on that white paper. I still want some open white space above the stenciling just for that addition of white space up there. So there you can see how gorgeous that is. And I'm also showing you the stitching line on the top of that pattern paper and on the bottom of the foundations paper, just to add that little bit of extra detail to the project. Now I'm just using some scrapbook.com dotted tape runner here, and just going to add that in onto the back of the paper. Now I have sized my project down at this point to 11 inches by 11 inches. So I took my foundations paper, my scrapbook layout base, and I did trim it down with my trimmer to 11 inches by 11 inches. I'm adhering it onto a piece of American Crafts raspberry cardstock, which is just a really pretty bright pink. And I really love that dotted tape runner from scrapbook.com because it does allow me to reposition my project here. And so I'm just going to make sure as best I can that I have that centered. Now that raspberry pink paper has been sized to 11.5 inches. So it's a half an inch larger than my main scrapbooking page front. And I'm going to adhere that onto a piece of American Crafts cardstock. This one is honeycomb, I believe is the color. Actually, do you know what? It's not honeycomb. I started out with this color and I found it was too bright. So I later switched it out to honeycomb, and you'll see that in a little bit here. I show you when I go to do the white splatter how I changed out the yellow to a much more subtle color of yellow. Now my photos are going to be ready to be matted here. And so I'm just putting a little bit of foam adhesive on the back, and I'm going to apply my photos to some ephemera from the Life in Bloom collection. So I'm just going to go ahead and add this on. I just want a little bit of the ephemera showing from around the edges of the pattern paper. So I'm just going to take my scissors and trim out just a piece slightly larger. And so I'm just going to trim that out with my Heidi Swap scissors here, and then that will be all matted and ready to go onto my project. I'll do the same thing with the second photo here. I'm using a smaller piece of ephemera this time, but some of this photo is just going to get hidden and tucked in behind the other, so you won't see the left side of the photo as much. So I'm just kind of trying to leave a little bit of an overhang here for a little bit of detail. And there you can just see how that's going to look tucked in behind there. And I've also chosen some of the floral ephemera from Life in Bloom. I chose 4 different floral pieces, 2 for the lower cluster and 2 for the upper cluster behind the photos, just to layer in behind my photos here. So there you can just see I'm going to use that trimmed off piece there as well, just to leave a little bit of that overhang over on that right side. And once I've got that adhered there, these photos will be all ready to stick down to my project. And I did want to kind of center them and offset them slightly, so just at a little bit of a wonky angle to each other. And I like doing that. I just feel like it adds a little bit more interest to the photos instead of just putting them onto the layout straight. And I know that some people that like everything to be completely linear would probably put these on the layout straight, but I feel like this is kind of a distressed looking project in a sense. So I didn't mind that the photos are offset like that. Now I am going to put a little bit of tape runner on the bottom layer of ephemera, and then I'll pop up the piece that's on top of it with some foam adhesive. And I did choose this title piece from the foam stickers, which says Shine Bright, and I thought that was just a perfect placement for a title for the project. So now I am going to just make sure that I get everything else adhered down, including my photos. I'm just taking a look at it, making sure I like the looks of everything. Everything is balanced the way that I might like it to be. and so on. And now I'm just going to go ahead and add some adhesive to my photos. Now for the ephemera above the photos, those two floral pieces, I did adhere them in exactly the same way as the bottom. So the piece that's underneath, I just adhered with the tape runner, and then the piece that's above, I did add a little bit of foam adhesive to the top area of the floral so that it pops up a little bit off the layout. So just going ahead, making sure everything is stuck down well, and just making sure that I double up the foam adhesive on the photo wherever I need to so that it does have the right level of dimension, as opposed to the other things that are placed around or under it, etc. Just to make sure that the foam adhesive sort of has that right amount of level. And I really love using these foam dots. They do make it a lot easier when you're just kind of going in at the end and making sure that things are the right amount of dimension. So I'm just going to, wherever I need to, just go ahead and add that little bit of extra foam adhesive, making sure that everything is stuck down to the layout. And then I'll just hold it up again so that I can look at it and make sure that it looks the way that I want it to. So now I can see exactly where I want to put my journaling strips. So I'm going to go ahead and get those ready to go. I decided that I wanted to also just add a couple of the butterflies, which are so pretty. And again, these are from the ephemera from that Life in Bloom collection. The Simple Vintage Life in Bloom collection from Simple Stories is just absolutely stunning. Every single element of the collection is gorgeous. I love the color palette. I love all of the different icons they've included. It's just such a stunning and beautiful collection. I've seen people creating some of the most beautiful projects with this collection as well, and I was so honored to get to use it. I just thought, oh, I am pumped about this one so much. It is just lovely. So I just wanted to add a pink and yellow butterfly in each of these different little areas. And I really love how that balances it off and just adds that little bit of extra texture. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of white medium to add some white splatter to my project. This is something I just love to do. It doesn't matter what I'm working on, whether it's my art journal, making cards, scrapbooking, doing mini albums, whatever. I really do like to add white splatter. I feel like it's just an element that creates this little bit of extra cohesive element. Oh, now this is the yellow that I originally used, and you can see now the yellow that's matted there in 12 by 12 on underneath the raspberry paper is just a little bit more subtle. And I believe it's called honeycomb. This is just going to add the most gorgeous white splatter. You can see that I have covered up my photos, I've covered up my title, and I have not added my journaling strips yet because I don't typically like to add the splatter over top of journaling or a title anywhere where there's words, and definitely not on pictures. Sometimes the words can get a little bit you can add the splatter and then you can't read the words as well, right? So I just always want to make sure that I keep the words covered, or that I don't add the journaling strips until after I've done the splatters. So here you can just see I'm doing a really generous splatter. This splatter that I'm using happens to dry really dimensionally, which is fantastic. And now you can just see I have my journaling strips typed out. I'm going to go ahead and put a foam adhesive strip on each one of these journaling strips just to bring them up off the layout a little bit. It just, again, adds that little bit of extra dimension and texture to the project. And I really love how the foam adhesive on the back just creates that little bit of extra effect. So I'm going to actually also use my tweezers for this process as well to help me place the sentiment strips. Once I have the foam on the back, I'll take the release paper off, and then I'll grab my tweezers just to help me place this. And this is always a little bit finicky because I always worry that I'm going to get my journaling strips on my layout crooked. And I definitely have put strips on my layout crooked before. It's something that can happen quite easily because it's difficult to line these up. So what I do to help is, first of all, I use my tweezers to help me place this. I make sure ahead of time that I've laid my strips out so that I know kind of basically exactly where they're going to go and the spacing. So once I get that first one down, I get out my T-square ruler and I make sure that that first one is really good and straight, because if you get the first one crooked, there's a really great chance that the subsequent strips are going to also be added not straight. So here you can just see I'm taking the time to get that straight or that T-square ruler out to make sure that I get this straight. And I'll just pick up the edge of that strip and I'll just make sure that it is straight, just even if I have to lift it up a little bit and move it. And if you ever get your strips down and they're not straight, you can always use a metal palette knife, a tool that you might have with your silhouette for your silhouette mat. You can always pick those up in that way and pull them up and reapply them as well. So anyways, there's always a fix, right? So here we go. We've got those on there. They're all good and straight, and I'm really happy with the placement. I like the journaling, the story that I'm telling. I love these two photos, and I really like how this layout turned out. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, this is a sticker sheet from the Life in Bloom collection. It is full of all kinds of really fantastic stickers. I wanted to use a couple of the little phrase stickers here for the sides of my photos. This is something that I often do with projects where there's stickers like this. I like to just add that little bit of extra little, whether it's even like part of the title sometimes or part of the story. And so I always enjoy using these simple story stickers in that way. It definitely adds more detail to the story and the memory that you're documenting. So add those in with my tweezers here. And then my layout's going to be finished. Friends, I enjoyed creating this for you today. I hope that you are inspired to create a 12 by 12 layout using some product like the paper Glaze Luxe. It's amazing. And the Simple Stories Life in Bloom collection. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time for Try Trendy and True. Have an amazing day, friends. Take care. Stay well. Bye-bye.